Hello, everybody. I'm Pastor Max Lynn, St. John's Presbyterian Church. This morning we're looking at Matthew chapter 18, verses 15 through 20. If another member of the church sins against you, go and point out the fault when the two of you are alone. If the member listens to you, you have regained that one. But if you are not listened to, take one or two others along with you, so that every word may be confirmed by the evidence of two or three witnesses. If the member refuses to listen to them, tell it to the church. And if the offender refuses to listen even to the church, let such a one to be to you as a Gentile or a tax collector. Truly, I tell you, whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven. Again, truly, I tell you, if two of you agree on earth about anything you ask, it will be done for you by my Father in heaven. For where two or three are gathered in my name, I am there among them. A month or two ago, we noticed we had not received a couple of payments from one of our longtime user groups at the church. Our Centers Commission had also just finished the new coming year contract with that group. Our administrator sent over an email letting them know the new contract was ready and they were late on their payments. We got back a short email that said they didn't want to sign the contract yet because they didn't want to pay while they were not using the church. Now, we had already given them a 40% discount each year for the last 17 years, and we subtracted another 40% off of that for the COVID-19 time. We wanted to give them a significant discount, but reasoned that their church should absorb more of their loss than we should. So we figured a 60-40 split was fair. There was always a provision within the contract that stipulated that if the New Year's contract was not signed by the end date, for whatever reason, they could just keep paying at the current rate of the previous year's contract. And throughout the years, here and there, we were off, a month or two or whatever, a week or a month or whatever. But they had always paid. So it was a bit of a shock when, after 17 years of consistent payments and fairly good communication, all of a sudden, without any notice, they just stopped paying. And it was a significant amount of money. And we figured that we're losing around $80,000 this year already. And now this would add another significant chunk to that. I was anxious and upset, and I felt it was disrespectful. I was gearing up to write a strong email in response to their email. How dare they just drop payment so much without so much as a phone call? About 3 or 4 sentences into my nasty email, one of my elders called. She was calling about a different issue, but she asked how I was, and I told her I was into the middle of this, I was upset about this issue, and I got to my point after 17 years of an assumption that we would both honor our side of the contract. How dare they stop paying without so much as a phone call? So my elder didn't listen to all that and then responded, well, I see you haven't made a phone call either. Well, shoot, she had a point. And it proves the point that Jesus makes in Matthew this morning, where 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, I am there. Whenever you get your buttons pushed, it's always good to check in with someone you trust. You want someone who likes you but isn't afraid to take a look at what's going on and give you a different point of view. And then, rather than gossip and gear up for war, trying to get people on your side, Jesus says, go and visit with a person you have this disagreement or who hurt you. If it doesn't work, take 2 or 3. Take it up each step, but make an assumption that you can get over the problem before making it into a bigger problem. So I hung up with my elder and called the leader of the other group. We had a tough conversation, but he eventually apologized for not talking to us ahead of time, and we received their 2 months payment a week or two later. Matthew has inserted this conversation of Jesus with his disciples for the benefit of the church. Matthew knows, as most of us do, that in any human community, when humans get together and work together, we will not always agree and we will not always be without sin. And sometimes you might have someone who goes off the deep end and does something that's truly out of line, harmful, or sinful. But the church is not just any organization, and in today's culture, we are really tempted to consider everything from a legal, adversarial point of view. One thing I've noticed that is truly obnoxious about legal maneuvering is that everything you say can and will be held against you. Once one of my sons got busted for graffiti, and we, the parents, had to talk to the lawyers of both sides before Nick met the judge. I happened to mention that I wasn't entirely happy that the artistic specialty of my son's Berkeley High School art teacher was graffiti. So the lawyer brought that up before the judge, saying that Nick's father was not teaching his son to take personal responsibility for his crime and blamed it on the high school art teacher. Now that was not at all my intention. But since she was trying to win, she twisted it that way. The law is designed to have a fair fight. Now, if you're in a fight and you need to have a fair fight, then the law is good. But the church's goal is to be loving, even when we disagree. So rather than escalate disagreement to conflict, circle the wagons, and go ahead to get the gossip chain running, we are instructed to go try and figure it out with that person. Go talk to the person, speak straight up and truthfully, and with the assumption that love and reason will win out. Now I would change or add to this order laid out in by Matthew's Jesus. If someone pushes your buttons and your anxiety, anger, and reactivity goes up, it may be best to go speak with a trusted friend or family member first, or even two, so they can help you if you are out of whack, or check your approach. But the assumption in the church aims for reconciliation, not victory. And you talk to the other person, this second or third person, not to gossip and malign them and try to make sure that they take your side only, but to figure out how you can come together and reconcile. How can you get past this impasse and this hurt that you feel? There are exceptions, of course, and one of them is if you are in a really vulnerable position and someone has done something truly bad or sinful, something like sexual abuse or something like that. You wouldn't necessarily want to set yourself up for more abuse. In that case, you would need a strong advocate or two right away, and you may not even be up to it, and that's a different kind of a thing, I think. But in the vast majority of cases in the church, family, or business, you don't want to think of yourself as an innocent and powerless victim and the other as powerful and sinful abuser. We want to stay empowered. We want to keep our own power of love. Assume the other person would like to figure out a way to resolve the conflict, get along, and do the right thing. And if someone fails to the temptation of sin and seems to be stuck on it, ignoring better judgment and even your conversation, then you have to bring other people into it and say, look, snap out of it. Now, the postmodern point of view would have us believe that the only relevant ingredient in relationship is power. Who has more and who has less? Now, this neo-Marxist point of view, that all things are driven by economic and political power has a lot of truth and is worthy of serious attention. It is a big piece of the truth, but it's not the whole truth. Certainly, love will address power. That's one of the things, one of the approaches that love will take. And we can say that justice and fairness are love in social form. Love your neighbor as yourself on the social and and cultural. I messed that up. Love your neighbor as yourself on the social level means policy and social and cultural bias are shifted so that our neighbor is treated like we would like to be treated and vice versa. Paul writes in Romans 13, "Owe no one anything except to love one another. For the one who loves another has fulfilled the law. The commandments, you shall not commit adultery, you shall not murder, you shall not steal, you shall not covet, and any other commandment are summed up in this word, love your neighbor as yourself. Love does no wrong to the neighbor. Therefore, love is the fulfilling of the law." As Christians, we have come to our relationships with love and a degree of humility. We need the grace of Jesus too. We do not know all truth, and we are not all good. And no matter who we are, no matter what position we're in, it is highly likely that we are biased toward the position that we hold. We are more likely to see the faults of our neighbor than our own. Thus, in the hope that others would consider that our wrongs are done primarily from ignorance, lack of self-awareness, or misunderstanding, rather than assuming malevolence or intentional sin, we too want to give those with whom we disagree the benefit of the doubt. Our Presbyterian Book of Order, in its chapter on the foundations for Presbyterian polity being church politics, points out that truth is in order to goodness, or that following and knowing truth produces good fruit. The purpose of truth is to do good, and we should not put truth and falsehood on the same level and pretend it is no consequence what a person's opinions are. It matters what people think and do, in other words. Yet, it says in the very next paragraph, we also believe that there are truths and there are truth and forms with respect to which people of good character and principles may differ. And in all these, we think it is the duty of both private Christians and societies to exercise mutual forbearance toward one another. In other words, if someone makes a mistake that hurts us or has an opinion that we disagree with, we don't automatically assume they are bad character and principles and see them as the enemy. We don't start gossiping and try them in the court of Facebook or Twitter. Or even worse, malign them as some people we in prominent positions are known to do. The one who has not sinned, Jesus said, cast the first stone. So I was pretty new to St. John's. I think it was at a session meeting maybe 16 years ago. We were working hard to get rid of a large budget deficit. And a few hard decisions had to be made. I can't remember the specific issue, but I got in a disagreement with one of my elders. After the meeting, the elder called me on the telephone and said, "Max, I felt you cut me off and didn't listen well. But the thing that she did so well was that she said it with a tone of voice where she was firm and a little angry, but as if she expected me to hear her and listen this time. She didn't expect me to be like I was earlier in the meeting. She expected me to listen and hear her, that I had hurt her feelings. I apologized and hung up the phone and thought, wow, she did that well. I'm lucky to have her as a session member. If another member of the church sins against you, go and point out the fault when the two of you are alone. If the member listens to you, then you have regained that one. Truly, I tell you, whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven. Again, truly, I tell you, if two of you agree on earth about anything you ask, it will be done for you by my Father in heaven. For where 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, I am there among them. Now, Matthew is applying these sayings of Jesus to conflict within the church. But clearly it is not just about conflict, but also about productivity and life. Christian life is meant to be communal, not Lone Ranger spirituality. And when I look around at the majority of the good work done around our church, I see 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 8 people coming together with their different thinking and talent and making things happen. And the awesome thing about it is that people are disagreeing on the way to a common goal, but it still remains the common goal. That is the primary focus. It doesn't take 1,000 people to make a church or invoke the power and the Spirit and the love of God. We all know the Margaret Mead quote, "Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. They are, in fact, the only ones that ever have." The sanctuary movement was started by a small group of pastors in a lectionary Bible study group here in Berkeley. A few people serve on each of our commissions in the church. You lend your talent and your time to make wise decisions, and because of that, we have a great staff, great building with all sorts of wonderful things for church, life, and community. We worship with a powerful word and joyous music. We find ways to be welcoming and caring to members and visitors alike. We have a balanced budget, groups for education and fellowship, and mission and justice work impacting individuals and the societies the world over. Where 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, I am there, says Jesus. This is the gospel of Jesus Christ. Amen.